Okay, so we are here coming from our book that we are finishing up. She Speaks Wisdom from the Women of the Bible to the Modern Day Black Woman. We are in our fourth week of January, which I'm just still not even sure how this has happened. Um, but here we are. Our woman that we are going to be talking about today, we kind of mentioned her last week and had a little couple of snippets. The same scriptures that we used last week are very similar to the scriptures we're going to be using this week, because last week we talked about Martha, which is the sister of Mary. Tonight we're going to be talking about Mary. So the same places where we found Martha, we're also going to find Mary, which is going to be Luke 10 verses 38 through 42, John 11 verses 1 through 44, and also John 12 verses 1 and 2. So these are the areas in the Bible. I highly recommend that you go and take it upon yourself and read those for yourself. But I'll give you just like a little snippet and background of Mary. So all of the things that we said about Martha last week, as far as lineage, family structure, all of that applies. Martha, Mary, Lazarus. Those are the three we know. We don't know who's the youngest, the oldest, the middle. We don't know where their mama and daddy were. We just know that they live in this town of Bethany, which was under Roman rule and empire under that time. And also that there were things that happened within the family. So Jesus comes, they are the host of Jesus and the disciples when they come into Bethany. And the first time we are met with Mary is when Martha is complaining about Mary being at the feet of Jesus while Martha is serving, cooking, doing whatever it is that she's doing to host him and the disciples. So Mary is at the feet of Jesus. That's the first time we hear about it. The second time we hear about Mary is when Lazarus has died and Jesus is coming. He calls for Mary. She comes to him and basically says the exact same thing that Martha has said. And then the last time we see Mary is in John, I think it's John 12. John 12, 1 and 2. And it goes on a little longer than that, but what the initial part of the story is after Lazarus has been raised from the dead, Jesus comes back. And you remember we talked about the last time that while the second time Jesus is in their home, Martha is still serving. So did she really learn her lesson? And Mary at this time comes and she anoints the feet of Jesus with the oil. So she has this expensive oil. She pours it on his feet, and then she actually takes her hair and begins to wipe the oil off. There's a lot of different significance that people say is around this, and we'll go through some of them tonight. So the couple of points that I want us to talk about and to take away from the story of Mary is one is in John chapter 11, verse 31. And I'm just going to read that really quickly for you guys. Let's go there. John 11, 31. And it says, when the Jews who were with Mary in the house comforting her saw that she quickly rose up and went out, they followed her, saying, she is going to the tomb to weep. Actually, I'm going to go a verse before that. Hold on. 3 verses before that. I'm going to go to verse 28. It says, when she had said this, she went her way and secretly called her sister Mary. So this is talking about Martha. The teacher has come and is calling for you, which means Jesus was calling for Mary to come to him. When she heard this, she rose quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered into the village, but was in the place where Martha met him. When the Jews who were with Mary in the house comforting her saw that she quickly rose up and went out, they followed her, saying, she is going to the tomb to weep there. And then it says, when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been there, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping and the Jews who came with her weeping, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled. He said, where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come and see. Jesus wept. Then Jesus said, see how he loved him. The Jews said, see how he loved him. But some of them said, could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? So what was the significance in that part for me? It's in verse 31, and it says Mary got up swiftly and ran, or quickly and ran. as soon as Martha came and told Mary, Jesus is calling for you, Jesus wants you, Jesus is asking about you, Jesus is looking for you, she didn't ask no questions. She didn't get no direction. She immediately went up and was up out that baby. So fast that she didn't even tell the people who were around her where she was going. My point in this is that we have been, for the last, I would say now, year, going into the second year of talking about radical, swift obedience. That when Jesus is calling you, when he has something for you, when God has placed something in your heart, swift, radical obedience is what it is we're supposed to be doing. I'm so proud of Lex because that is exactly what she did in doing this podcast. So Marriage Miracles with Lex was her having swift obedience, not understanding, not knowing, but moving forward and doing exactly what it is that God had called for her to do. Now, in her instance, people knew, some people knew, but it wasn't for her to announce to everybody that this is what she was doing. When Mary got up, she didn't say nothing to nobody. She just went. They had to assume what she was doing. They had to make an assumption about where she was going, because she was like, it don't matter what you think. Jesus is calling me. I'm up out of here. And she got up and she was gone. Honey child didn't waste no time. Boo Boo Kitty was out of there. So if God has called you to something and is calling you to do something, having that swift and radical obedience is so important, because when she gets there, although she does say the same exact thing that Mary had said, like, if you would have been here, my brother wouldn't have died, they still were able to have communication and dialogue about what was happening. And it didn't tarry long for him to have to go. After that, he's like, where did you lay him? They go and show him. And then we know Lazarus get up, he come up out, he ain't dead no more. But it was a time for one, her swift obedience led other people to Jesus as well. So you doing what God has called you to do is going to immediately lead, because it's a God calling, is going to lead other people to him. The other people, the other Jews who were with her in the house would have never gone to see Jesus had she stayed there, had she not been obedient in what it is he was calling her when he called her. So had Martha come and said, hey, Jesus is calling you, and Mary didn't move, those people never would have been introduced to Jesus. It's the exact same way with us. When he is calling us to something, if we don't move, we are never going to be able to lead certain people that he may have to come into his presence. Now, these people had an assumption in saying, well, he opened the blind eyes, the blind man's eyes. I wonder if he's going to be able to allow Lazarus to live, or if Lazarus wouldn't have died if he would have been in his presence. And they got to actually witness, not only was Lazarus dead, but now they see him alive based on what Jesus did, based on the miracles that he was able to perform. Had Mary been disobedient, had Mary not listened, that would have never happened. So now there are more eyewitnesses to what Jesus can do in his miracles based on her obedience. The same thing applies for us. Some people will never see the miracle signs and wonders that Jesus is able to perform if you are disobedient, if you are not doing what it is that he has called you to do. That's enough for me to drop the mic right now, but I'm going to go ahead and give y'all a little bit more. But that is a major bar, a major point. Listening to God is going to bring other people to him. All right. The other part that I want to talk about is her pouring the oil on his feet and anointing his feet and wiping it down with oil. Part of this goes into prioritizing your time with God, prioritizing the time that you sit at the feet of Jesus. That is so important. She was doing that before. So now she's recognizing and acknowledging, because that was a significant thing that you did for someone special, or as a what was it? I can't even think of the word. Someone who was sacred. So she's now signifying this is a special and sacred person by the act that she's doing that only the Holy Spirit could have led her to be able to do. And when she does it and Judas says something, it shows that when you are in alignment, when the Spirit is leading you, there may be people who are going to question what you are doing, but it doesn't matter, because she didn't have to say nothing. Jesus answered for her. She's doing this because when you are operating and flowing in the Spirit, you don't even have to respond to negativity, because he's going to answer for you. He's going to take the words that you thought you needed to say and correct people. He's going to be able to lead you the Spirit is going to be able to lead you to do what it is that you were called to do, and let him do the rest. As long as you are walking in that obedience, you do not have to say anything. You don't owe nobody no explanation. She didn't go into a conversation with Judas as to why she was doing it. And even though she could have made thousands of dollars from this oil, and although she could have had so much money come from this and so much notoriety and all these other kind of things, she never had to say anything, because Jesus was like, don't worry about it, I got this. There are so many times where we need to just sit back and allow him to have it. Sit back and allow him to speak for us. As long as you are doing what it is that he has called you to do, he is not going to have you out here looking silly. Because he's not going to make himself look bad. Remember, God is never going to put himself in a position where he is going to make a fool of himself. So if you are doing what it is that he has called you to do, he is going to make sure that it is prosperous and that it's showing other people, because that is how we are going to win souls to the kingdom. So that, and it was also preparation for his burial. She didn't know that that's exactly what she was doing, but it was preparation for what was to come. And the act shows that love is more valuable than worldly possessions. So what she was showing out of her love and adoration for him, not just because of what he had done for her, but because of who he was, it showed that money didn't mean nothing. This money that I could get from making this oil means nothing, because he is more important than the financial gain that I can get from this. And really, that's what he wants from us. He wants for us to be able to spend time with him and to say, God, you are the most important thing in my life. Remember, I spoke about this before, as I said, people always think that having money means that it's not being godly. And that's not it. The Bible does not tell us having wealth or money is not godly. It says the love of money. And what Mary was showing in this instance is that I don't love money more than I love being obedient to who you have called me to be, and anointing you and preparing you and doing these things, because the money that I can get from this is worthless if I don't have Jesus. If I don't have Jesus, the money means nothing. So she was showing her act of kindness and her act of love in that moment. The last thing I'm going to leave you guys with is what time, and it's funny because I know Amber said something about this earlier. What amount of time are you spending at the feet of Jesus? What amount of time are you spending with God? And what are you really gaining from that time? Because just to sit there don't mean nothing if you walk away with nothing. So she was there and she was getting something, because at that time, women really were not taught. Women were domestic. They married very young. They were not usually even allowed to be in the room with men. So she was like, bump all that. I'm going to get as much as I can from him while he is here. How much are you getting from Jesus when you're spending time with him? How much are you allowing God to pour into you when you're spending time with him? And then are you taking that and being able to do something with it? So when her brother died, she knew who he was. So it was nothing for her to go to him when he called her, because they already had a relationship. We talked about the relationship between Martha and Jesus, and it's the same with Mary. She had a relationship with him. So when he called, she wasn't asking questions. Well, why is he calling me? What do you want me for? What am I going to do when I get there? My brother's dead. Why am I coming to him? He needs to be coming to me. If he was here, my brother wouldn't have died. She didn't do none of that, because she had a relationship and she knew the power in which he had. So then when she did get to him and she says what she says, and she believes and knows that, okay, he can, if anybody can do it, Jesus can do it. So you have to know in your situations that if anybody can do it, Jesus can do it, but you have to have that relationship with him that you can trust him. You have to have the relationship with him that when he calls you, you answer. You have to have the relationship with him that you don't always have to question. Now, are there times where you're going to question? Because we saw Martha questioning. Well, why aren't you telling her to come up and help me? Why, how is he going to come back alive? Because the resurrection, I know he's going to come with the resurrection. Martha was the questioner. Mary was like, I'm with it. I'm with all of it. I'm right now, no questions. What you say, I'm here. I'm going to do it. And not to say either one of them was wrong, but it goes to show us how your relationship with God can be different than someone else's relationship with God, but it does not diminish or take away from that. So that's what I got for y'all today. I'm going to stop this recording and we are going to start the next one.